In this video, we'll learn how to share layers between channels here inside of MARI. Okay, great. So I've taken the project we're working on and I've actually hidden most of the geometry. So really what we're looking at here is the head and the body, because I want to focus on the skin texture in this video. Don't pay any attention necessarily to all the black blotchiness on this. That's actually the ambient occlusion being calculated by the BRDF shader as a result of our ambient occlusion that was baked. That'll go away when we turn off of full lighting. You can see that goes away. So when it comes to this skin texture, the way I created this skin texture is I used images of actual skin and projected this. So you can see here, if I zoom in and look at this really, really closely, we've got a lot of really nice details of actual skin that's showing up in the textures for our character here. If I were to just go back to flat lighting, you can see that detail a little bit clearer. Things like skin pores, wrinkles, things of that nature. So this is all really useful data that I can repurpose into channels, for example, the specular channel, or maybe even a roughness channel. Now, I've done that in this project, and I want to show you how I've done that. So on the right, I have my diffuse layer stack. On the left over here, I've docked in a specular layer stack and a roughness layer stack. Now, if we look here, this image projection layer is titled image_projection. And coming over here to my roughness, you can see that that particular layer exists right here. You can tell it's the exact same layer just because I didn't actually rename it. It's just called image projection copy. Over here inside my specular channel, it's up here, image projection copy 3. So what I've done here is I've copied this layer and pasted it into these two channels over here. Now this is one way that you could accomplish this sharing of data, but this isn't really truly sharing. It's just copying and pasting. If I was to come in and make any changes in my diffuse map over here, those changes would not be reflected inside my roughness and my specular channels. So let me show you first how you can just quickly copy a layer from one channel to another. You can just simply select a layer, for example, this image projection, and I'll just hold down the Alt key and drag it over until I see that little white line. And you can see, there we are. We now have a new copy of that image projection layer that I've drug and dropped right here into my specular channel. Now it's going to take MARI just a moment to process that request. It's thinking about what I just did, and actually I don't need that. This is kind of the workflow that we want to avoid, because I want to make sure that any changes I make to this image projection layer, maybe I come in and rework some of the skin textures in a certain area, I want to make sure that those changes also get populated to the layer that holds that same data over here inside my specular and my roughness channels. And we can accomplish this by sharing the layer instead of copying the layer. This is a situation where we can come over and simply, instead of holding down the Alt key while we drag this layer over, we can just hold down the Shift key. Let me come over and do that for you. Now, again, we have a new layer over here inside my specular map. It's called Shared Image Projection now. Now notice here, something happened in both my specular and my diffuse layer stacks. This little chain link icon showed up next to each of those layers. This indicates that that layer has been shared somewhere. So there's a link, a dynamic link that is made between these two layers. So if I was to come over here and paint into my image projection on the diffuse, that same paint would show up right over here in my specular map. And vice versa. I could paint into this shared layer here, and it would appear over here. So if we actually come in and click on that little chain link icon, you can see the linkage here. The assassin object, diffuse, skin, image projection. And if we came over here and clicked on the little chain link icon, it says assassin object, specular channel, shared image projection. So it's telling you where that particular layer has been linked to. So what happens if we came over to the roughness? Let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. I'm going to select this layer, hold down the Shift key, and just drag it and drop it, and I'll just put it right there underneath that existing image projection layer. Now, I know it's going to take MARI just a moment to think about this, so we'll wait for it to finish processing that request. And you can see there we go. It's the process is finishing here. Now, if I wanted to work in this fashion and basically transfer my previous workflow into this layer sharing workflow, there's a couple more steps that I would need to handle, a couple more things that I would need to do here, because you can see here this image projection layer right here actually has an adjustment stack on it. So let me just show you how we could handle this. So I know that I no longer need this layer because this layer does not have a dynamic link to my diffuse channel like I want it to. I'm going to come over here and try and resize this palette just a bit so we can pin it down. Thing likes to disappear. We'll go ahead and click that pin icon so it doesn't do that anymore. And there we go. We've got that pinned down so we can quickly and easily access these three layers inside of here. So we could come in here and we could just simply add in another adjustment stack here on our shared layer, and we could simply drag these layers here over into that new adjustment stack. Now, let me tell you why I did not use this sharing workflow for this particular layer. By using this same data in my specular and my roughness channels, basically, let me just come over and show you what this looks like. I'm going to hold down the I key to bring up the channel pop-up. Let me select my, in this case, roughness channel, and I'll just look at the current paint target. Actually, let's look at the current channel here. Wait for Mari to process. All right, fantastic. So you can see in my roughness channel, basically what I have here is a grayscale version of that skin. Again, a lot of that skin variation, both the subtle variations and also the high contrast variation with like the skin pores, a lot of that detail is still here. Now, the reason why I didn't share this initially over is by adding in this adjustment stack on top of this shared layer, it would also add that adjustment stack over here inside my diffuse channel, which is no longer visible because I changed the channels. So this is why I didn't initially do it, but in situations like this, you could absolutely use this sharing process to share information over. And then once you, say, are done with that linkage, maybe you are completely done with the skin's been approved, now you don't need that linkage anymore, you could come over here and simply right-click on this layer, come over to sharing, and choose to unshare it. Now what happens there is when we unshare a layer like that, it now breaks the link to the original source layer. Now we still have that image projection layer shared over here, but we no longer have that chain link icon here. So now we could go about the process of creating that adjustment stack, and it would only affect the roughness channel. So in this video, we've learned how to copy and share layers between channels here inside of our Mari projects. This is an important workflow to me because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll create details in my color map, and then I'll take those details and either manipulate them or build on top of them inside of things like my roughness and my specular channels.